The man you see covering his face as he walks out of jail is the dad, who police say called 911 this week after his wife allegedly drugged his kids with NyQuil and tried to drown them in a pond. This is video per KHOU TV. Police say Domingo Quintana pulled his kids from the water outside their massive mansion in Texas, but he's facing an unrelated animal cruelty charge. And we have new information on this mystery as we just learned who his wife is and the potential financial challenges this family's facing. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Each day this week, there has been a new twist in the story we're talking about today. And with each twist, there are more questions being raised, and so much of this is still a mystery. This was the scene yesterday outside the jail in Liberty County, Texas, more than an hour outside Houston. This is per the Vindicator newspaper, who published this video on Facebook. And the man you see here covering his face is Domingo Quintana. Now, he was not covering his face in his mugshot after his arrest on Monday. He was arrested on a misdemeanor charge of animal cruelty. Law enforcement have said that this is unrelated to the case that thrust his family into the spotlight this week. But you have to say it is notable that Quintana would be charged with a misdemeanor, booked into jail, spend the night in jail, and then rushed out after bonding out in the hours after what sounds like a very traumatic experience that took place at his home this week, and that's raising a lot of questions. So let's start with where Domingo Quintana and his family live. It is a massive $3 million home in rural Liberty County, Texas.
You're gonna have 4 kids, possibly on NyQuil. Multiple bottles on scene.
So that's video per Broadcastify of the radio chatter just before 7 o'clock in the morning Monday when deputies say Domingo Quintana called 911 and he allegedly told dispatchers that his wife, who has been identified as 39-year-old Jessica Quintana, had drugged their 3 kids with NyQuil and tried to drown them in the pond outside their home. Now, the kids are ages 15, 11, and 6. All 4, the mom and the kids, were rushed to the hospital. In fact, the mom and the 11-year-old were airlifted to the hospital and were in critical condition. The 15 and 6-year-old were brought to the hospital in Houston and they were in stable condition. I do have an update on their statuses that I'll get to in just a moment, but here's what deputies said in a news conference on Monday. This is per Fox 26 in Houston.
I believe it was the dad that was helping get anybody that was in the water out of the water. Upon the deputies arriving, the kids were wet, the dad was wet, and the mother was still in the water. And the deputies are the ones, I believe, that got in and got the mother out of the water.
So right now, you say you're focused on the mom as the suspect or perpetrator?
So right now we don't have a specific focus on the mom or the dad. We're looking at both.
It's important to note that Liberty County deputies said that Quintana was cooperating and he went down to the station and he answered questions the day all of this happened. He's not charged with a crime related to what he says happened at his house involving his wife and kids. Now, you heard law enforcement say they are investigating, though, both the husband and the wife. Then we had the bombshell on Monday in the hours after that news conference because Domingo Quintana was booked into the local jail on an animal cruelty misdemeanor, which is why he was in custody and had to be bonded out. ABC 13 in Houston said that they read the charging documents, and all of this stems from when investigators were called to the Quintana house and they were searching the property and they found an emaciated cat. Authorities say the cat was locked in a shop building on the property. It didn't have air conditioning and there was a bowl but no food or water available. Then another TV station, KHOU, says that it wasn't actually one cat, it was multiple cats, dogs, and chickens that were in disturbing conditions on this property. Quintana's bond was set at $5,000. Now, the name of the mansion that Domingo Quintana and his family call home, this massive sign outside, it's called Rancho Monte Carmelo. Deputies say the Quintanas bought the land and built the mansion on it, and they've been living there since 2017. Now, one question a lot of people have had is, how do the Quintanas afford this massive property, a $3 million mansion? When someone owns a house like that, you wonder, what does someone do for work? Well, deputies said on Monday that they were told that Quintana sold cars, but then they publicly said they weren't able to confirm that. And just when you have a member of law enforcement saying that to the media, it just kind of raises some questions. Now, we have learned, it appears, that Domingo Quintana has had some financial challenges because he's been named a defendant in multiple lawsuits, including this one. This was a judgment from January of this year after Quintana was sued in 2023 in Harris County, that's where Houston is, in the category of debt, contract fraud, and misrepresentation. Now, we don't have the documents laying out the case against him, but the court ruled in the favor of the plaintiff, and according to this document, Quintana is on the hook for more than $138,000. Now, we also found an active case in Liberty County where Quintana is being accused of not paying taxes for years on a 72-acre property. That suit claims he owes more than $43,000. Now, even his wife, Jessica Quintana, and her name has just come to light. She's the owner of a property, according to online records in Harris County in Houston, where she is accused of being more than $18,000 behind on taxes. That is per the Harris County Tax Collector's public website. Of course, it's unclear if any of these civil or financial issues have anything to do with what happened allegedly between Jessica Quintana and the children on the property Monday morning. In putting this story together, I typed both Domingo Quintana and Jessica Quintana's names into truthfinder.com, and their addresses came up, linking the two of them together. Here at Law&Crime, we partner with Truthfinder and we use it to get details on the people involved in our stories. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can be an excellent resource to give you some peace of mind because it's one of the largest public record search services in the US. And with the paid subscription service, you can get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And right now, you can get 50% off your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/OTC. Now, at the time of this recording, again, no charges have been filed in connection to this NyQuil pond incident that allegedly took place, but law enforcement says they are investigating. They do plan to interview the children once they're released from the hospital. The Texas Rangers are involved. Now, we do have an update on those that were brought to the hospital, including the mom, Jessica Quintana. She has been upgraded from critical condition, and now she is listed in good condition. She is still in a hospital in Houston. As for the Quintana children, they have all recovered, and they will soon be released from the hospital, according to law enforcement. And when they're released from the hospital, they'll be put in the custody of Child Protective Services. Again, the Texas Rangers involved in this investigation as well. Now, if you find the details of this story odd, frankly, you're not alone. Of course, there's a lot of questions unanswered, but here's how the Liberty County Sheriff's Office phrased it on Monday per Fox 26 in Houston.
Yes,
How
sir.
would you describe the scene here and what transpired?
I would describe it as bizarre and breathtaking, seeing everything that we've been faced with today.
Joining me now to talk about this case is retired detective commander with the Chicago Police Department, Will Svilar. It's always great to have you on Law&Crime. We see this video of the dad coming out of jail, and he has his, he's covering his face as he gets into the car, facing this misdemeanor animal cruelty charge. And I just think if he's telling, and there's no reason to believe at this point that he isn't telling the truth, but just the idea of hitting him with this charge of a misdemeanor around the same time that apparently he went through a very traumatic experience involving his wife and his kids. Like, what do you make of the timing of that?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, obviously they were called out for the reason that the kids were in the water, and he makes a 911 call saying the wife drugged the kids. But once you get there, I mean, if you see something in plain view or something that's obvious, you're going to have to take action on that. Now, the timing of arresting him for that, and why is he arrested? She lives there too. Why are they arresting him? Are they trying to get a better look at the property to see what else they can see? Because the story is a little odd to start with. But yeah, it could be so it was blatantly obvious that there was all kind of evidence of animal cruelty, or perhaps they wanted to take a little better look.
And I know, like, there's, say you want to, they want a little bit more in terms of, because they have said they're investigating him and they're investigating his wife. So the police have been open about that part of it. But say you arrest someone and it's because you want to have a charge on them because maybe you are investigating them for something else. And we don't know, but like, what do you get out of that as law enforcement because he's already out of jail. It's not like he was being held for a long period of time as you're trying to build a case against him.
Time and access. You get time because, you want to know where this person is. And if you can hold this person for 48 hours or however long they held him for, you have some time to take a look around. Access, with the things happening on the grounds of this sprawling ranch, from what it sounds like, now you have access. You have a reason to be there. You have a legal reason to be there. Once you're there, now you can determine if there's any follow-up that needs to be done that you might need to go get a court order for or a search warrant. But you have to establish a legal reason to be somewhere.
And he's been, to police's point, cooperative in the investigation. I mean, maybe to a point where it led to him being charged with animal cruelty. We're not sure about that. But it's really until we learn more from his wife, who is in good condition now, and these children that are now with CPS, he's the only person that knows what happened or has told police his side of the story, that he heard this commotion outside and then sees his wife, who we don't know anything about, with the kids in the water. I guess, how do you go about this investigation knowing at this point you really only have his word, and I don't believe that there are any surveillance cameras on the property that would tell otherwise?
Well, you're fortunate in this situation is you have 4 other people you can talk to, the 3 kids and the wife. So they're going to bring the story, and it's either going to corroborate what he has to say or it's not. But you have 4 other people to talk to, and all of those interviews have to be done. Now, with the kids, depending on the ages, we do victim-sensitive interviews where we have people who are specifically qualified to talk to children. But these kids are a little bit older. So it's not like they don't know what's happening. And again, I don't know anything about the kids at all, other than their ages. But all the ages of these children, they can, and they're all released from the hospital, so they're doing well enough to they have to be interviewed.
And the children are in the custody of CPS. The dad is now out of. Does that tell you anything, that they just wouldn't go back home to their father after once they're released from the hospital?
Well, what are the conditions of the home? The conditions of the home are such a state with these animals that were emaciated and all that. Is there disease there? Is it an injurious environment for these children? And it could be because of the animals, and it could be obviously because somebody tried to kill them. And that'll give you time to keep the kids out of the house until you figure out what's going on. Because again, like you said, we don't know if she did it or if he did it or who did what yet. So the safest thing to do is get those kids out of there until you can figure out if they're in danger. When you're doing a case like this, where at this point you have a witness, someone who is saying, "Oh my gosh, this happened on my property," he makes the 911 call, and he was cooperative enough to go down to the police station. He's in that interview room. What's your strategy to try and figure out whether he's telling the truth? Well, you have to when you start this interview, you have to kind of have some information about what's going on. You want to have a little information going in, and then you let him or her talk. You ask basic questions, you let them talk. When they start feeding you stuff and it doesn't make sense, or maybe you find some points where they're incriminating themselves or something that points to them as culpable, got to stop, and now it's a different interview. If you're in there just trying to get information, you don't have to Mirandize anybody. If you start making it an accusatory type interview, now you have to stop and do Miranda. But initially, he's the outcry. You don't have any reason to think that he didn't do it unless there was something blatantly obvious on the scene. You let him tell you what happened, and then you adjust your interview from there. What is the strategy with Mirandizing someone? Because I'm sure the tone in the room always changes when you start reading a Miranda rights to somebody. And if you are trying to play it cool and just get information, but at the same time, you don't know if he's going to say something incriminating, and this is just more a general question, what is the strategy of when you bring up Miranda rights and how you kind of insert that into the conversation? You could talk to somebody for 25 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours, as long as you're talking to somebody about anything else. Like when I used to do interviews in the room, I would talk to people about their neighborhood they were from. And do we know some of the same people? Oh yeah, I knew this guy from this corner. And then you get into when you're going to start making the interview where you're going to try to get them to incriminate themselves or to tell you what happened with them being the subject, then you have to Mirandize. And Miranda doesn't have to be going with a piece of paper saying, "Do you understand?" The whole thing. Some places have signed Miranda warnings. But you can say, "Oh, by the way, while we're in here, I've got to read you your rights." and you can make it part of a conversation. It doesn't have to be regimented where you march in and do it, but you have to get it out there. If you're going to be making anything that's accusatory or something where you're trying to get some evidence from this person, they have to be Mirandized. That's their right.
As someone who's a detective, I mean, just when you read this story, what were some of the first questions that kind of came to your mind as you're reading the narrative of what we know at this point?
Well, the big question is Mom was still in the water when the police got there. And the kids were all out. All three of the kids were out already. So he saved the children, but not the mom. So why not? Why was she still in the water? That would be the big question. When you show up on a scene like that and there's kids everywhere, the first thing you got to do is you got to make sure everybody gets medical help. Make sure everybody's out of the water, breathing, and the ambulance is there. And then you got to call some other people in. And then you got to call a detective. You got to call in forensics. But when you first initially get there, your priority is to make sure everybody's safe. The investigation will be the investigation. The first thing you do is you got to make sure everybody's safe. My big question is, why is she still in the water? I don't know if she was out farther, I don't know, but why is she still in the water?
That was one I was thinking as well. I mean, because I didn't know you don't know if he was going to go, get the kids out first and then police arrived right as he was going in. But as they were describing it, and they said that she was still in the water, she needed to be pulled out by deputies, and she's still in the hospital. She seems to be in the worst shape out of everybody involved. That was something that it was just kind of interesting. And then I also thought too, like in the press conference initially, I don't know if you saw this part, but clearly they have this massive home. I mean, you look at it from the sky, and then you're naming your home the Rancho Monte Carlo, and you're like, who are these people? And apparently they kept to themselves. It's off the road. And then for the sheriff's deputy to say that he sells cars, but we haven't been able to confirm that. Like, that just seemed a little odd. That, and it just, I guess for the question for you is, what is the strategy if you're law enforcement? Maybe he's speaking off the cuff, but just to insert that into a press conference, knowing that that's going to kind of get the media thinking and talking. I mean, what is the strategy behind the information that you let out in stories like this where we just don't know a lot?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. As far as he sells cars, what does that mean? Does that mean at the end of the road where you pull into his property, he's got 3 cars with for sale signs in it, or does he have a license to sell cars? Is he, a wholesaler or a used car license? But getting that information out there, maybe they're saying, somebody out in the public says, I did buy a car from that guy, and I thought this was weird when I was there, or something along those lines, to try to explain, what is his connection to the community? What is his source of income? Who else knows these people? Like you said, they keep to themselves. The property's way out there, and it's not like you have neighbors that you have barbecues with. Just some outside influence or outside information other than what they're going to get from the family. It could be something as simple as that, but it's curious that they would talk about him selling cars, but can't verify it. It'd be easy to verify. Do you have a license or don't you? And it'd be filed.
And again, this all may be, and I just keep bringing back to, like, maybe this is a guy who, even if it's unclear what he does for a living, and his wife maybe had an incident and some sort of mental break, and then this case happens and everything's separate. But then at the same time, there are these financial issues that have come up. He loses $138 million or $138,000, judgment. I think that was, came down earlier this year. He looks to be more than $40,000 back on his taxes on a 72-acre property in Liberty County. His wife is listed as the owner of a home that's $18,000 back on the taxes. When you're building a case, or even just investigating, maybe they're not building a case, but you're trying to figure out who these people are, how do those types of civil issues get brought into the story that you're trying to figure out with this family and these children?
It could be the whole story. I mean, financially, this wouldn't be the first family that got into financial trouble and saw no other way out but to take everybody out. It wouldn't be the first time this happened. Financial pressures are huge, and they're a big burden to people. Now, you get to a point where, am I going to lose everything I have? And if I lose everything I have, what's going to happen to my family? What am I going to do with these kids? People start acting and thinking very dark in situations like that. And financial is a huge pressure to have on you. So it could very well be that their finances and the prospect of not having a home. She's got a house. They're going to take that house. They're going to take. What am I going to do? What do I do now? And then you get into a situation where you make some very irrational decisions. And I'm not saying who did that, if in fact that happened, but it could be the wife, it could be the husband. Right now, it sounds like they're trying to figure that out.
I think too for the first responders, where you get this call of these children, and bizarre was a term that law enforcement used, but also breathtaking, because you think of this scene and you're trying to save these kids, and the dad's in the water, the mom's still in the water, or the dad's wet, the mom's still in the water, and all of that. When you think back to being a first responder and you're on the scene and you're obviously focused on the kids, what's your awareness level when it comes to thinking that this potentially could be a criminal, we don't know if it's a criminal case, but potentially could be a criminal case, and having kind of the wherewithal yeah, we need to save these kids, but also what's the dad doing over here? How's he acting? I mean, what is it like to kind of respond to those and trying to take things in at the same time while trying to, be an EMT in some ways to save kids in an emergency situation?
Well, I'd like to tell you that every officer is going to respond to the scene, myself included, and I'm going to assess the whole scene and make sure you're not. You're going to be very hyper-focused on the immediate issue. The immediate issue is getting the kids out of the water. The whole house could be burning down, but you're getting these kids out of the water. You are taking care of the immediate issue, and that is where all your priorities. I can't tell you how many times I've run into a scene, an active shooting scene, or a scene where there's been a shooting, and you run right across shell casings because you're not paying any attention. Because your priority is to get to the immediate problem and fix the immediate problem. Afterwards, after that's done, now you slow everything down. But it would be not genuine to say that every time you get out of the car, you are wary and you're cognizant that this might be a crime scene and I need to protect the crime scene. No, you are going in, and if it was me, I'd be trying to get those kids out of the water, and whatever else happens after that, we'll figure it out.
What type of access? So the mom's in the hospital right now. She's no longer in critical condition. She's in good condition. When would law enforcement potentially get access to her where you could have a Mirandized interview perhaps? Because I just think if she was on, whatever type of, whether it was NyQuil or something else, to make sure that she's in a state where a lawyer couldn't say, hey, you did this, and she wasn't in the right mental state to be able to ask her questions in a case.
Well, she has to be lucid. She has to be able to make her own decisions. And again, she's not in custody. So you could go up there, and again, this is also what we've run into is hospital access. What does the hospital say? Can you come up on the ICU floor? Will they allow you access to this person? Can this person be interviewed? And that's a determination that the doctor makes. Now, if they're under arrest, they're under arrest. They'll be under police guard. And even if you are under arrest, doesn't mean we have unlimited access to talk to you. You can always request a lawyer. But she has to be lucid enough to understand what's happening. And she has to be lucid enough to, if she wants a lawyer, to stop the interview and to get a lawyer, to not be spoken to anymore, not to be talked to. So is she lucid? Can she make her own decisions? Does the hospital give you access? Do you have probable cause to place her under arrest? So it's all those factors.
Yeah, it seems like each day this week, there's like a new twist, and yet there's still so much we don't know. We'll see what happens today as this story continues on. Retired Detective Commander Will Svilar of the Chicago Police Department. Thanks as always for being with us on Law&Crime. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Chris.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.